Mbonu. A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, especially the ladies. Wow, I'm so excited to be here today. When I got the invitation from Juliet, listen, it was, I didn't even need to think twice about this. I said, I'm definitely on board, looking forward to coming to Accra, love Ghana, love it. So any excuse to come out here and most importantly to mingle and have conversations with the future of women in sport, women in the boardroom, women in leadership positions, all of you that have come out here. This is an opportunity that I always relish, so I'm very excited to be here today. In terms of what it is that, or the message that I want to convey today, you know, individuals like myself, like the other panel participants that you're going to be hearing from very shortly, like Chisholm and some of those individuals that you've been hearing from, my role in terms of really pushing this narrative of women taking their places and being in positions of power and being in places where previously we were told that this field is not for women, sport being a prime example in terms of what it is that I do. My role is, of course, leading by example and showing people through my work, through what it is that I do day in and day out, that we're more than worthy, that we certainly can rise despite some of the challenges that we face. And I've loved that. I've loved that role of being an absolute trailblazer. Because when I started out in this industry 10 years ago, you know, a lot of people say, how did you start? Is this something that you always knew you wanted to do? Did you always know that you wanted to become a sportscaster and then you just pursued it? And the truth and the reality is that no, I didn't. Because when I was starting out 10 years ago, I didn't see any standout examples of female sportscasters. You know, someone that I could look up to and say, oh, wow, she's doing it in this male-dominated field. This is a career path for me or an option for me to pursue. So I literally had to find my way in this particular industry. And the way that I started out, I always say that it was fate. This is something that I was always meant to do. I've always had a passion for sports. I come from a family that absolutely loves sports. It was a part of growing up, you know, going to watch live games where I grew up in Soweto. South Africa, watching games weekend in, weekend out, and just, you know, looking up to sporting heroes and heroines, but there were more heroes back then when I was growing up. So I always had this passion, this innate desire to be part of the sports world, but I never knew that it was possible for me as a woman to be a part of this world of sport. And I remember when I was invited to come through to the SABC, the South African Broadcasting Corporation, back in the days, just to see, you know, what happens behind the scenes, how people actually get to work, how they get on air. At the time, I knew that I wanted to be involved in the entertainment industry because very outspoken, and I love the limelight, you know. So I knew that I knew that I was, you know, I wanted somehow to be involved in the entertainment industry. I thought, I don't know, quite possibly a presenter or maybe an actress. So when I came to the SABC, I viewed one of the individuals that actually invited me was a voiceover artist for a junior sports show at the SABC called Sports Buzz. Graham Richards was his name. So I came through, I saw what actually happens when you do a voiceover, and I didn't really, you know, it was the first time that I saw this, behind the scenes, what happens. And the producer of the show Sports Buzz was a woman called Melinda Lombard. And she watched me, this young girl, just sitting there at the back, so keen, observing this. And she said, listen, do you want to try doing a voiceover? She gave me a script. I think it was a rugby script, junior rugby. And I mean, I used to read a book a day. I used to be one of the shining individuals when it comes to public speaking, to debating. So you asked me to speak, you asked me to perform, you asked me to read, simple, easy things. So I took the script, I jumped into that voiceover booth, and I read it flawlessly first time around. And she said, wow, okay, well, we're going to use this for the show today. Can you come back next week? And that's what happened. While I was completing my matric, my studies at high school, I started coming on a regular basis to Sports Buzz, reading scripts, doing voiceovers for a junior sports show. And then one day she said, I don't know, do you think you can maybe write, you know, the scripts that you actually read? And I thought, okay, script writer, Why not? Because at the time, Sports Buzz, the show I think is still on, really focused on junior sports. So it was grassroots level, you know, mini netball, and it was different sporting codes. So in a sense, it was a good way for me to be introduced to the world of sport from that grassroots level, a basic level. So I almost got an apprenticeship being introduced into the world of sport from right down there at the beginning. So you know, sometimes when you get into a job, there's the book smarts, you study for a particular role, or there's the street smarts, where you know you can do an apprenticeship and you go down to the ground and you get to know about this role. So I had the street smarts, and that's how I got started in terms of Sports Buzz. Started writing my own scripts, doing the voiceovers. Then one day she said, "Would you like to come behind the scenes and actually, you know, watch us record a game, whatever match it was?" And I was always willing. Every time I was asked to do a role, every time I was given an opportunity, I jumped at the chance. I was the yes girl. I was always up for it. And I made sure that before a particular show, before a particular program, I was always prepared 110%. Because that's the thing, you know, as women, especially back in the days, every time I'd be in front of the camera, every time I was about to open my mouth, I would have critics, millions and millions of critics. The first thing they wanted to do was catch you out, because what's a woman's role in sport? What am I doing in front of the camera? I should be in the kitchen, which is strange, because women, in fact, are the individuals that raise our future heroes and heroines. We most certainly have a place, a very important role and a place in sport. You know, we nurture and we raise those future heroes and sports icons. We're the ones that guide their careers. We're the ones that take them to the practices. We're the ones that give them the encouragement, that push them to rise to the level. So women most certainly have, in fact, it starts with the women. It starts with the mothers in terms of raising the future icons. So I always made sure that I would never be caught out. Every time fellow colleagues or aspirant sportscasters or journalists would come up to me to ask about the role that I would play, it would turn into a quiz. It was always me being asked about my knowledge in sport, me being quizzed about developments that took place a long time ago, because, come on, I'm not a player, I'm not a former player, so how is it that I know so much about the sport? But it's because of my passion. My passion is what drove me. You know, every time they would buy a magazine at home, I would start with the back pages, you know, taking a look at what it is that's happening in the world of sport. I had a keen interest and an actual drive and passion in finding out all that I possibly could when it comes to sport. My DSTV subscription, I have it because more than anything, it's about the sport. It's about live sports. It's about Super Sport Blitz, things that are going to keep me in the know. Not about the soapies, not about the movies. I do that in my downtime, but I really just have an absolute love for sports. So that's what's really driven me. Now you fast forward to where we are today, and the opportunities for women in sport haven't been better and haven't been greater at all, because, you know, we've been having these conversations about equality and making sure that women are given more opportunities, and social bias, breaking down the stereotypes. These are active conversations that we are having day in and day out. And you've got big organizations, sports bodies, corporations that have it as part of their as part of their drive, as part of their drive, actually, you know, to put together situations in which they can actually encourage women and give women opportunities. So there's never been a better place for you to be a part of this wonderful world of sport. I have some of the uncomfortable situations that I've been put in very early on in my career was, for example, having to go and do interviews in the dressing rooms where you've got players that were half dressed, you know, and you have to walk in there and you have to interview these individuals. And obviously they think that she wants to talk to me because I look good, or she's got a crush on me, or whatever it is. But to go in there very, very confident, to make sure that you look them dead in the eyes don't stray down to the rest of the body, and you ask them the questions that need to be asked, the difficult questions, and you actually showcase in your line of questioning that you actually know what the sport is about, you actually know what their career is about. And I went through all of that. I showed my staying power, and now, almost 10 years after the fact, I've done almost everything in terms of South African sport, African sport. I've hosted unbelievable events, and I'm now part of the Premier League television team out in London. In fact, thank you. And in fact, the only sports anchor and the only member of the talent team that is outside of the UK. So for them to take an African girl, a woman, and bring her to the studios, put her in front of the cameras, and let her be a mouthpiece to speak on the Premier League was a big move. And to do so with authority. I was not born in London. I don't live in the UK, and yet I know all there is to know when it comes to football there, and I can be seen as this mouthpiece for football over there. So for me, that's been one of my highlights. And it doesn't end here. The story still continues. There's still many more highs that I'm going to pursue and that I'm going to scale. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to say, is that like so many of you, especially when it comes to Africa, where we started out from. We started out with nothing and under very, very difficult circumstances. I grew up under very difficult circumstances. My parents separated. There was no money at home. And in fact, when I was out in high school and completing my studies, I didn't know what it was that I was going to do, because there was no finances at home for me to go into university and, pursue some of my other dreams. So it was always something I always asked myself, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to continue? Because there's just no financial support from that point of view. And fate happened, and I ended up being at the SABC and then getting into this role and making this my career. And it was all due to the fact that I'm absolutely passionate, the perseverance that I have, and also the strength of a woman. There is no greater strength and no greater power. If you look, yeah. If you look at the sort of things that we've had to go through, we are mothers. I've got 3 boys, boys club. Still trying to work on the goal. I was married for 6 years. That ended in 2006. And it was a very, very difficult relationship, a very difficult marriage where there was absolutely no support, extremely abusive. And for me to go through that, through raising my kids and still pursuing my career the way that I did, and to come out on the other side of it, throughout all of those challenges, I just became so much more, so much stronger and so much more focused. And that's the drive that I have even to this day. So it is possible. You can come from absolutely nothing and become everything, in your ability, and your dreams are valid. There's power in your dreams, and it is all possible. So just believe in yourselves. Thank you.
Wow.